Is it visible, ma'am?
Yeah, sure. The slide is very well visible. So we can neglect this one. We can move to the next slide, which talks about the brief history. As you can see the glance of the new education policy, it first of all started in, it came up into being, it came into existence in 1986, and it was the first education policy by Mrs. Indira Gandhi, the then Prime Minister of India. Then in 1986, the digits reversed from 68, it became 86. And we were blessed to have the second education policy under the leadership of Mr. Rajiv Gandhi. Then in 1992, there were certain modifications that were offered by the then ruling government under the guidance of Mr. P.V. Narasimha Rao. And finally, after 34 years of lot of transformations that India has gone through, finally, we have this new education policy 2020. We all know this is under the flagship of none other than Mr. Narendra Modi. And the chairman of this leading committee is Dr. K. Kasturi Ranjan. So this is really important for me. Just before we move on to the next slide, just a second, I would like to let you know that the difference between the previous education policies and this education policy. The previous education policy considered on quality more than quantity of the education, because it was education had to be provided to all. So that was most important, that it talked about providing education to all, giving equal opportunities. That was the previous education policy that dealt about. But when we talk about this new education policy, it talks about quality in education. So that is a major difference in these education policies that were there. And they were known as education policies, and this is something known as the new education policy. Can we have the next slide, sir? And this is the three major important changes. I told you before, we have n number of changes, but these are the three major changes that this new education policy talks about. We know this new government is the true believer of changing names, the transforming names, baptism. So this is again the baptism. HRD ministry would be changing into the Ministry of Education. The GDP investment, as we can see, it was really, really low, because education sector has been very, very neglected part of our Indian society. So the GDP investment was just 1.6%, which will be raised to 6% according to this new education policy. And then the gross enrollment ratio. This is again an alarming situation for India, because there are not many people who are involved in the education sector. So the gross enrollment ratio from 50% increase it requires, and they expect it to go by 2035. Can we have the next slide, sir, please? Yes, these are the changes in school education, and I would be referring to, there are a number of changes. We all know that, the Anganwadi workers are being brought into it, the foster years, the neglected years, as we call 3, 4, 5 years, they also have been given a proper space. But these are the most important changes according to, I'm not going about with figures, but just for you to revise through, it is more a holistic approach. And academic, vocational, and extracurricular, they're all going to be on the same platform. And there was a bigger confusion about that English will be done away with. No, I would just like to clear it beforehand. English is going to stay. The government is open to 3 language policies. So these 3 education policy, language policy would definitely be there. And coding, something very important, would be introduced from 6th grade, and 10 bagless days that the government proposes to is also the major change. And of course, then we have a lot many changes in the higher education that we'll be dealing with when the panel discussion would go on. Thank you so much, Himanshu sir. So that was just a brief about the new education policy, the changes.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for throwing the light on the new education policy. So here we are having some questions. We are having some confusions that how this policy is going to be implemented, because we as educator, we are the one who are dealing it with on the first place. Okay, valuable input. Dr. Tyagi, what is your take on this? You have been a very young educator, and I've seen your growth as a teacher to the vice principal. So you have worked from the grassroots level to the highest, one of the highest level in the institution. So what are the challenges you feel are going to happen with this regard? regarding the training the teacher so that they can become enabled to identify and they become capable of finding out the true and best capabilities of the students.
Right. Thank you, Himanshu. It was indeed praiseworthy of you to acknowledge the things, and it is indeed wonderful when you get to hear those words from the colleagues that were a part of you, maybe just for a few short time. But yes, coming back to this really, really important thing, जो हमारे बाकी के दो elite panelists हैं, बहुत बढ़िया उन्होंने example दिया CCE का, and it has become, a historical example for India. जहाँ पे हम फॉरेन चीजों को जो होते हैं we adapt to those things without actually making the ground proper. In a very layman language, अगर मैं आपको एक example दूं, जब तक जमीन तैयार नहीं होगी, आप अच्छे से अच्छा बीज, अच्छे से अच्छा खाद डालिए, फसल नहीं होगी. So what is that soil to education? The soil to education is our teachers, and yes, I truly feel that implementation is a big task that this new education policy has not talked about at all. Never ever we get to hear about what are the ways by which this new education policy would be implemented. Plus, taking India into context, we call India as a subcontinent. Every part of India is different from north, east, south, west, different varieties, different cultures, different working environment. How do we group into one? And that is the most important and alarming situation also for us to understand. There was this statement from Deputy Minister of Karnataka. He said, by hook or crook, we are going to be the first one to implement NEP. It is not a rat race. We are talking about children. We are talking about the future of the country. हम बच्चों की बात कर रहे हैं. Hook or crook जैसी बातें, in case if you are going to use this terminology for new education policy, the whole essence melts away. We talked about CCE pattern, it came from Finland, wonderful ratio. But here, not only about teachers, Himanshu, even parents were not ready to accept this. Schools got in a rat race of having maximum grade, 10 GP, which was amazing, the wonderful results that were yielded out. So when we're talking about this NEP, it is actually, in case agar main ek phrase mein quote karu, it is taking bulls by the horn. You have to have that mammoth task. And it is unleashing, it is running away. And that is, the major irony of India. यहाँ पे policies बहुत अच्छी है. Whether you have rules and regulations, you talk about constitution, it is the brightest constitution in the world. You talk about dowry system, you talk about child labor, everything on papers is magical. But when it comes to ground reality, nobody tells what is to be done. Nobody tells how it is to be done. Teacher training, yes. We have online trainings going on. You pay 100 rupees, you get a certificate from CBSE. Every teacher is rushing out there for a certificate. But that certificate will yield no good till the time the teacher will not be motive driven. You need to have teachers who are thoroughly, absorbing this thing that I have taken up this profession not by choice. It is my choice to take up. It came to me as a chance that I had nothing to do. I became a teacher. This is a big taboo on us. Oh, you are a teacher, maybe you had nothing to do. So with this kind of mentality and setup, first of all, we need to have the soil ready to implement this NEP. Once we have this, I'm sure wonders will flow in.
Thank you so much. Your inputs have given me two thought of questions. So I'll talk. थोड़ा सा complicated question है. Are you there, ma'am?
Yes, I'm all here.
Yeah. So, ma'am, my question is to you. हम लोग सोसाइटी में आज का जो समय है उसमें टीम वर्क बहुत कम रह गया है, रेजिलियंस नहीं है, कम्युनिकेशन गैप इज आल्सो देयर. इवन बेस्ट ऑफ दिस टीम्स हैव द कम्युनिकेशन गैप. तो वही बच्चा हम लोगों को देख रहा है, वही बच्चा अपनी फैमिली को देख रहा है और हम ही लोगों से सीख रहा है. अब उसको नेशनल एजुकेशन पॉलिसी कैसे टेकल करेगी इन योर पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू?
Okay. First of all, Himanshu sir, national education policy कुछ भी tackle नहीं करेगी. Let me be very, very clear. It is we who are going to be tackling. And when we talk about life skills, we have listed 10 life skills, which I think so, jo bahut achhe schools hai, they implement these life skills in their lesson plans, they take it up. When we come to talk about life skills with the children, definitely, because एक जो बहुत अच्छी policy की बात मुझे लगी, that it is incorporating vocational education. Vocational education will definitely bridge the gap between the people who are working in different sectors, different environments, and it is also going to be bringing up dignity of labor, जो मेरे ख्याल से है, which is again a very important life skill. The child should value what the life has to offer. In case if there is a child whose father is a carpenter or a potter, वो कभी इस चीज को flaunt नहीं करेगा. But the child whose father is a doctor would definitely flaunt, my father is a doctor. So when this carpentry or this pottery or things like that would become a part of your curriculum, would be taught to the children, so this will actually invoke a lot of craftsmanship in the child. And then this dignity of labor would be set up. So बच्चा जब देखेगा that carpentry is something not to be looked down upon. SUPW, आपके स्कूल में आपके टाइम पे भी होते थे when you were a child. I know we used to have these SUPW periods, though I used to ask my sisters to do the part. I used to avoid doing all that. But you had the basic sewing, stitching, so the tailoring, these things were never looked down upon because we knew these are handy jobs we have to do. So the dignity of labor, bringing everyone at par, at platform, is something that new education policy would definitely instill a beautiful life skill in the child. And Himanshu sir, if you could just allow me, there was something that was sticking in my mind when Lata ma'am talked about coding. Yes, because this is something, you know, it is, I'm very sensitive about this coding thing that the government is planning to introduce. We should not confuse coding with a desktop thing. Coding is software. Coding is something that is very sophisticated, and not even your IT teachers are trained for that. Your ICT teacher, the teacher who's taking up computer in your classroom of your child, your laptops, your mobile will never ever support coding. Had it been so easy, we would all have become coders. There is a big vacuum that is there. We need to hire professionals for that matter in case if you want to teach coding to your child. And when it comes to grade 6, the child is not that maturely, not that mature to understand coding. But yes, once when the child understands this thing, coding is something that is inherent. Every child is not born for coding, but NEP says everybody should learn coding. That is the drawback of the policy makers. They want to have a herd of sheep. Everybody should follow in the same direction. If it is coding, everybody should learn coding. Whether the teacher of your school, the computer teacher, she is skilled in teaching that or no, you need to have a software person calling from outside. It would require an extra input, monetary pressure on the school, or school kahan se wo pressure create karega? Fees बढ़ाएगा, and then the parents would say, हम क्यों fees दें? So this is a very, very vicious cycle. So when you're introducing something, when you're implementing something, don't chew more than you can bite. Go bit by bit. एकदम से आप overall transformation नहीं कर सकते. There is a lot many things. You need to have a digital revolution. ये online education की जो हम बात कर रहे हैं, it came as a surprise, but taking a meeting on Zoom is not coding. Taking a meeting on Microsoft Teams or, gathering people, it is not the real essence of digitalization. The network issues pour in, the sync pours in, there are a lot many hurdles that pour in. So when we are talking about NEP, we have to understand that again, it is some beautiful platter, but when you're going to taste it, it's better. You have to have lot of input. You have to have a proper infrastructure. You have to have computer labs. And then, very importantly said by my esteemed panelists, the flexibility. हम बोल रहे हैं that CBSE offers n number of subjects. In my school, say for I'm talking about Gargi, class 10th, we don't have just 5 subjects. We give them option of 2 other subjects. That is either they take IT or they take food production. So my child has 2 different options for vocation. When it comes to class 11th, we have fashion technology, we have home science, we have physical education, music, fine arts, and then very beautifully, CBSE is the first board all throughout the world जिसने artificial intelligence introduce किया है. But that also has been given as an option, right? So when we are talking about the life skill process, when we are talking about everything, first of all, we need to understand that this is all inbuilt. NEP is not offering life skills. NEP is not offering anything new. It is only on the teachers who have to have a beautiful training, and that is holistic training, not just learning of the facts and figures, but also understanding the importance of the child. Just one beautiful thought I would like to share over here with all of you.
Sure.
Mr. Pavnesh Agarwal, I must all of you have heard this name, very renowned name. His words echo in my ears till date. I heard him speaking on a platform, and he said, and that really motivated me as a teacher. He said that the parents, you need to understand the mindset of the parents. The parents are, they're giving away their child to you. And it is not the child that is made of flesh, bones, and blood. It is their dream. They're handing you their dream to you. So as a teacher, it becomes my moral responsibility. Don't look for excuses, what the people think about my profession, what I have to do. Put in your best efforts that you can do. NEP is just giving an outlook to the teachers who are already enlightened. But yes, it will definitely enlighten the people who were less enlightened, as far as I believe.